The Well of Sychar, based on John 4 through 30, a SufferingWell short story. Leah leaned over the side of the well. Since she never came at the same time as the other women, she had time to contemplate its depth. Her brown eyes, troubled and impassioned, searched the well for the top of the water. Dark, full lips formed the word yes, but found no reflection. The surface was too far down. She picked up a stone. Dropping it, she slowly counted 1, 2, 3, before she heard it splash in the water. Yes, this is the place. Her eyes narrowed, and she knew that finally she had reached the solution to her problems. Leah tossed in another stone. This time, though, instead of a splash, she heard her mother's voice rippling through the span of 11 years. Of course it's deep, Leah, dug long ago by our father Jacob. Jacob called Israel by our God. Our people are called by his name, and you are Leah, named for Jacob's first wife. Yes, Leah, the rejected one, she knew now. Leah's mother had turned from the well then, but Leah had lingered, probing the rich darkness, sensing somehow that here lay her destiny, her hope. Her mother, impatient, had jerked her away from the well. Come, there's much work, you daydream too long. Leah, the unwanted one. Her name fit. She was every bit as popular with her family and her people as her ancestress had been with her husband Jacob. Leah of Samaria, tainted by location, by history, by name, and by men. At 8 years of age, she had known too well the cruelty of men's desires, known that an impassioned embrace held not pleasure, but fear, terror, and guilt. Leah had turned from the well and whispered, Yes, someday, here, this well shall bring my deliverance. She had followed her mother with a perverse determination as she imagined what it would be like to bathe in that water, briefly, for an instant, and then to discover the end of pain, of terror, and of guilt, to breathe no more, cry no more, fear no more. Yes, 11 years ago today, she had made up her mind, and now, today, was the day that she had longed for, the day she had planned for, her day of salvation. Leah let her head covering slip down to her shoulders. It didn't matter what people thought, if there were any to see her. The town gossips had more than enough material at her expense. She dangled her hand into the well, wishing she could touch the water with her fingertips before diving in. She thought back on the past 9 years. 5 husbands, the first when she was only 12. When she became a woman, her father and brothers had feared discovery, and so they discarded her, cast her aside to a series of men who cared not for virginity, but for full lips and a supple body. Men who divorced her as easily as they had taken her on. The type of men who were rightly called filthy Samaritans. And now, Judah. She hadn't married Judah. Why bother with the niceties when they knew as well as everyone else that she would not be his for a lifetime, that she was nothing more than a whore to throw away at a whim? And he disgusted her. But then, had she ever loved anyone? Leah, the unwanted one. No one had ever wanted her, only the pleasure they could derive from her, and the pain they could inflict upon her. A tear dropped into the well. Leah listened for it to touch the surface of the water. There was no sound. She wiped her eyes quickly. She was too strong for tears. She leaned farther out over the well. Now was the time. Woman. The voice startled her. It wasn't Judah's, though that was what he called her. Woman, never Leah. Though it could be a sign of respect, it wasn't with him. She was afraid to see who else might want to speak to her. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She almost allowed herself to tumble into the well. But no, if someone saw her fall in, they would feel obligated to rescue her. Leah turned as brazenly as she could, her eyes filled with hatred, not bothering to pull her covering over her head, to face this one who had spoken. When she looked at him, she was startled. He was sitting, seemed to have been sitting for quite some time, perhaps before she had arrived at the well, perhaps for all eternity. His eyes held hers, and for one brief, panic-filled moment, she thought he knew why she was there. She dropped her gaze and pulled her covering over her head. The sun beat down hard on both of them, and yet she felt a shiver run down her spine. She tried to look back into the well, but found her gaze drawn irresistibly back to his eyes. Eyes that were deep, deep as the well. Oh, deeper still. The wisdom, joy, and compassion she found there were deeper than Jacob's waters, yet bubbled up to the surface, overflowing into fine crow's feet at his eyes and smile wrinkles at the faintly upturned corners of his mouth. Draw me a drink, please, he added kindly. She could not remember a man ever having asked her for something. They only demanded. She forced her gaze away from his face to take in his whole person. He seemed weary. Dust filled the creases of his neck and arms. His feet were caked with it. His fingers and hands were rugged and worn, scarred too. His clothes. Why hadn't she noticed before? His clothes were humble but distinctly Jewish. Why, she asked incredibly, do you, a Jew, ask me, a woman and a Samaritan, for a drink? He stood up slowly, gathering his mantle and his staff. He was thin and ungainly, but he smiled at her, a smile barely perceptible, yet strangely pure. He sat on the edge of the well, no more than 3 feet away, her water jar the only thing separating them. Yet she knew with all certainty that there was nothing to fear. Leaning toward her, he waited until he was certain he held her gaze. If you only knew who was asking you to give him a drink, you would surely ask him. He would have given you living water. Leah turned her head, watching him out of the corner of her eye, unable to look away. She broke his hold suddenly and looked into the well. This well that she had been ready to dive into, the water that was to end her miserable torment. Was this water living? Why, what was living water? She looked back at him questioningly, searchingly, then saw the laugh playing at the edge of his eyes. It was a joke then. How do you propose to give me this living water? Leah asked, her tones mincing, her right eyebrow cocked. You have nothing with which to draw. The well is deep, she added, punctuating the last word by dropping a stone into the middle of the well. Our father Jacob gave us this well. Are you greater than he? She lowered the bucket into the well and drew it up, conscious of the strange man's gaze upon her. She felt that she must be on her guard with him, as with all men, and yet there was that purity, as if he had never, would never, touch a woman in lust. She emptied the bucket into the jar and tipped it for him to drink from. Her heart beat rapidly. What is wrong with you, Leah? She asked herself. Surely you're not attracted to this man. He's not handsome and he lacks sense. He drank deeply, obviously overcome with thirst, perhaps more so once the water had touched his dry mouth. The water of Sychar was refreshing to anyone, especially a weary traveler. He put the jar down on the ground for her, breathing a sigh of appreciation. His next statement, after his deep drought, startled her. Everyone who drinks this water will feel thirsty again. She nodded, eyebrows raised. It was an unusual observation, not particularly profound, but of course it was true. Whoever drinks of the water that I give him won't ever thirst again. The water I give him will become a well inside of him and will spring up into eternal life. He said it playfully, yet seriously, gravely and joyfully at the same time, clapping his hands together, raising them up like a fountain. He threw his head back and laughed, but she knew it was not a joke. Leah stared at him. She felt at once that she must run from this madman, but her curiosity and her sense that he spoke clear, vital truth held her. She watched as he shook his head at the sky, grinning from ear to ear. Suddenly she realized that he knew God and was talking to him even now. Sir, she asked when he looked at her again. She wanted to know how to know God as he did, but she was afraid to ask. God would not allow someone as impure as she to know and talk to him. She tried again. Sir, give me this water you speak of so I won't have to come back to this well ever again. Leah knew as she spoke that the stranger understood why she had come to the well. A moment ago she had looked forward to plunging into its depths. Now it had become for her the symbol of her empty life. He sat up eagerly. Go, call your husband and have him come back with you, he urged. I have no husband. Even as she said the words, she knew that he, looking into the depths of her eyes, could read the truth. Shamefully, she dropped her gaze. You're right. You've had 5 husbands, and the man you're living with now is not your husband. He paused, waiting for her to look at him again. When she did, expecting condemnation, He spoke softly, kindly. "Thank you for telling me the truth." She gasped. She had sensed that he could look into her soul, and yet, to hear him state so clearly what had been her life hurt her more than she could bear. "You must be a prophet!" she exclaimed, and then, needing desperately to change the subject, "My people worship on this mountain, as our ancestors did, but you Jews say that Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship God." The stranger smiled. He knew he had made her uncomfortable. He allowed her a little space. "Woman, soon you will worship the Father neither here nor in Jerusalem. You don't know what you worship, but we know who we worship, for salvation is from the Jews." He fingered the edge of his robe, allowing her a moment of peace, then turned and faced her squarely. Looking deep into her eyes, sensing the hunger in her soul, he answered the question she had longed to ask. Soon, even now, the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. That is the kind of people God wants to worship him. God is spirit. If you want to worship him, you must worship him in spirit and truth. Leah looked into his eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. He had not told her, as she had expected, that she had no business seeking God. Oh, how she wanted to know God. Oh, how she wanted to purge herself of the awful guilt she had borne all her life. "I know that Messiah is coming. When he comes, he will explain all this to us," Leah said hopefully. And then the stranger said what was probably the most natural, most unexpected thing he could have said. "I am he." Suddenly, everything around her seemed to disappear. Her head covering slipped off unheeded. Her thoughts no longer centered on herself, her needs, her sorrow, her hatred. She looked at this man, this dusty portion of humanity, and wondered, not in doubt, but in awe, that the Messiah could be so normal, so unpretentious, that he would pass the time of day talking with a woman such as she. Yet, what kind of a woman was she? She found her own image of herself changing even as she looked into his eyes. She knew that he had no concern for what kind of woman she had been, except to have compassion for her. She felt that he spoke for God when his eyes proclaimed, "You are worthy to speak to the Messiah, for you understand his purpose better than his own people. I chose you before the foundation of the world. You will worship God, and he will work through you. Because of me, you are righteous." Unlikely as it seemed, she knew it to be true. Leah was vaguely aware that a group of men had joined them. Jesus held her gaze a moment longer, slowly winked at her, then turned to his men. She smiled back and slowly turned away, pondering his gaze and his unexpected wink. His wink had shown affection, a deeper sense of the love in his eyes, love without lust, different from that which she had known from father, brother, husband, lover, the love of a true friend, love which she knew would be willing to die for her if need be, a love which in turn raised in her the desire to please him, and him alone. Leah understood that certainly this day she had gotten exactly what she had come to the well for. She had come with her water pot, not looking for water, but wanting to find deliverance from the life that had bound her. She had thought to find that deliverance in the water of death, but found instead a living water. She wanted only to share this wonderful news with everyone in her village. She broke into a run, forgetting her earlier despondency, wanting only to call the others. She realized with a start that she had forgotten her water jug, but she shrugged off the concern. It could be retrieved at a later time. Her errand was much too urgent to be concerned about pottery. She had to tell everyone in her village about this new friend, and Judah would be the first she would seek out.